everyone, David Chattel here, CEO of NGL Collective and host of the business edition of Hispanicize Hangout. Today, my guests, I'm proud to say, are Stephen Wolfe-Pereira, the CEO and co-founder of Encantos Media, and his co-founder, Susie Jaramillo, who's the president and chief creative officer. Welcome, both of you.
Hola, hola. Great to see you, man.
It's great to have you both here. So, Encantos Media is an award-winning public benefit corporation with a mission to inspire 21st century kids to learn 21st century skills using the power of entertainment and technology to reimagine education in a direct-to-consumer way. We're going to be talking a ton about Encantos Media and you both. But first of all, how are you both doing? It's been a while, and how is sheltering in place treating you?
Well, ladies first.
So sheltering in place has a whole new meaning. I have two little ones who are both going to school online. So everybody's always on a call. My 8-year-old will be like, Mom, I have a call. Right. So we are all on calls all day long, and we are doing a lot of cooking at home for every single meal. And we are all being extra gentle with each other so that we can keep the energy in a very nice, good way. That's us. We're in Brooklyn, so.
Okay, Brooklyn. How about you, Stephen? Where are you in the world, and how's it going?
So, I'm born and raised New Yorker that now lives in LA. So I'm based in Culver City, where Encantos headquarters is. But it's been, I guess, the silver lining is I am typically on the road every week of the year practically. And now being sheltered at home is actually great because I get to be with my family, and I also have little ones. So I have a 4.5-year-old named Sebastian, and my daughter Sienna is 2. And so it's actually been really just great to, again, cook at home, spend time, and the learning at home is a real thing. And kind of, for Encantos, we've really been trying to figure out, like, how can we help everyone out there, because 9 out of 10 kids in the world are now stuck at home, learning at home. So it's been obviously a really, just completely different environment that we all were going to 2020 on.
We are going to be unpacking that in a big way in just a moment. So I want to talk just a little bit about, your backgrounds before we get into Encantos. Stephen has, I think, 20 million followers on LinkedIn alone. So who doesn't know Stephen? Susie, you and I are more in the normal range of followers. But for those who have never heard of either of you, tell us your story a little bit culturally, your background, and professionally, sort of what led us to today.
Wait, can I tell you a funny Stephen story? Stephen was my very first connection on LinkedIn. Stephen was the one that got me on LinkedIn. So every once in a while, I'm reminded that Barack Obama is my connection that has the most connections, and that Stephen Wolfe was my very first connection on LinkedIn.
I love
I'm an early adopter, that's all.
Some might say he's the mayor of LinkedIn.
Definitely.
Gary V might be bigger than Stephen Wolfe.
That's yeah.
Okay, so go ahead. Who's going first?
Ladies first, always.
So, I come from the world of advertising, right? So a little bit about me. Before Encantos, I ran an advertising agency called Latin Vox and later Vox Collective. And we worked for about 12 years in the multicultural, mainly Hispanic space. And every single day we pitched the Hispanic opportunity, the multicultural opportunity, how important our customer base was, and how much we over-indexed in every industry, how much we bought, how supportive we were, how loyal, what a loyal customer base we were. And yet on a regular basis, I saw that really that opportunity was kind of taken for granted, and people weren't really interested in creating content or product for this market. It was sort of like, okay, that's great. Hispanics are there, but they'll just, buy whatever we put in front of them, and we don't really have to go the extra mile. And I just thought, oh my goodness, there's such wonderful content there, right? There's such great storytelling fodder there. So I'm from Venezuela. My mother was half Irish, half Ecuadorian, and so I grew up between Venezuela and the United States. And then I've also traveled extensively throughout Latin America as I worked in the agency space, shooting in Argentina, shooting in Mexico, Puerto Rico, whatever, all that great stuff. And so when I had my first baby, I was like, I really wanted to be able to share my culture with my kids. I wanted them to grow up singing all the songs that I grew up with, Los Pollitos Dicen and Un Elefante se balanceaba. And I wanted them to be really proud of who they were. That was important to me. And this is before politics got really crazy. I really want them to be proud of being Latino here in the United States. And I looked around and I saw, wow, a couple things. One, there's no really great premium Latino baby brand or toddler brand. Like all of our wonderful stories are nowhere packaged beautifully in English and Spanish. That was my first insight. And then number two, wow, there's this really opportunity to use technology as a learning platform. Like, why can't I have a beautiful nursery rhyme brand that also teaches vocabulary skills or literacy skills or math skills or any of these like basic skills that you now have these wonderful platforms to teach. And so I started thinking about, this idea of developing a baby brand that would later become Canticos, that was musical, that was a bilingual nursery rhyme brand, and that could really benefit the market from a cultural point of view, but then also in terms of like preparing kids for, early childhood learning for preschool. And at that point, I was talking to a lot of people. I was having lunch with a lot of people, a lot of conversations. And I said, let me write my friend Stephen Wolfe. I see on Facebook that he just had a baby. I wonder what he's up to, because I know he's gonna like look around and say, what is there? So, and then I shot Stephen an email, and the rest is kind of history.
This is great. You emailed your first LinkedIn friend.
I did. I emailed my very first LinkedIn friend and said, hi, Stephen, what you up to?
I was the smartest person you ever. That was an unbelievable move to link in with Stephen.
He got me on the platform. I wasn't even on there before him. He like sent me 3 invites to get on there.
Yeah, you emailed him. You didn't say you LinkedIn. You emailed and then you. Great. Give me a little background, then we'll unpack some more. Go ahead.
Sure. So I am a proud Dominicano, born and raised in New York, but most of my family is still in Santo Domingo. I always love people's reaction when I tell them I'm Dominican, and they look at me really confused, and they're like, "But you don't look like Big Papi, and you're not darker." And I'm like, "Well, that's the beauty of the Latino market. We come in all beautiful shades of the rainbow." But where Susie, I feel like, is being very humble. She is the art side of this story, and I bring a lot of the science, and certainly we're both, I think, savvy when it comes to being entrepreneurs and kind of building a business. But Susie is just an Emmy-nominated artist, director, writer, producer. She truly is the whole package. And so she actually built from the ground up one of the top 5 multicultural creative agencies, and then it got bought in 2012. So she is really one of the few female entrepreneurs that have successfully built and sold businesses. And now we are on this journey for Encantos together, and she's my partner in purpose. But my background, I started in finance. I worked in private equity for the first couple of years I guess with Jamie Dimon when he was the CEO of Salmon Smith Barney at the Blackstone Group, and at a Latin American private equity firm called Violi Byerman Partners with a Colombiana who was the founder of the company. But that's kind of where I cut my teeth on technology. And I was doing a lot of what they call TMT, technology, media, and telecommunications. And that's where I eventually got recruited to join a company called Akamai Technologies. Oh, yeah. And Akamai is a company that came out of the Lab for Computer Science at MIT. It basically is the operating system for the internet. You use Akamai every day. You might not know it, but they are 40+% of global internet traffic, public company. The ticker is AKAM. I was there for about 5 years. First started in the network engineering group. And I was actually, I built out all the Latin American infrastructure. So similar to Susie, lots of travel, spent tons of time in Latin America. And then got kind of sucked back into my financial background. I went to work for the CEO and the CFO, running corporate strategy, M&A, investor relations, and really got to touch all parts of the business. And the genius thing about Akamai was really not necessarily the technology, which was amazing. I really thought it was the business model. And what Akamai built was a platform on top of the internet. And what people didn't understand was that there was lots of hardware that needed to be laid down for the foundation, but it was really an asset-light software model that just could scale, and it would scale with a key metric, which was internet growth. But went from technology basically for like the next 10 years, and a friend of mine told me that Univision was going private and they were looking for talent, and I'm like, Univision, like I'm in tech, I'm in finance, like what would I do there? And they're like, oh, but you're Latino, like you could do something there. And long story short, I ended up going to work at Univision in 2008, and it was a crazy time. That was really where you were coming out of kind of the recession was actually just starting up, but they really needed people to explain the Univision story. And somehow I ended up doing marketing, even though I was hired to do data and analytics. And so that really kind of kicked off my career in marketing. So after 2 years, meeting all these crazy folks on the agency side and on the brand side, I ended up getting recruited to Publicis Group. And so I joined Starcom MediaVest, and I had a couple of different hats there. I ran all of the Walmart business, so that was $1 billion of media spend. So I got to be in Bentonville, Arkansas every week for 4 years. So that was just where I cut my teeth on retail. And then I also ran all the multicultural business. So that was horizontal, and that was running about $750 million in media spend for African American, Hispanic, and Asian across Procter and Coke and Heineken and Kraft and all these other brands. And then after 4 years there, I got recruited to be a CMO at a data technology company called Datalogix. We got acquired by Oracle. Then I got recruited to join a company called Newstar, and I was CMO there. And we got acquired by a private equity firm. And then I was the CMO of an AI company called Quantcast. But at that point, I really wanted to, kind of follow my passion, which was really building Encantos, which Susie and I kind of started back in 2015. And I joined full-time as CEO in March of 2019.
That is quite a resume, sir. Yes, our paths crossed somewhere in there. You essentially,
very often.
It's really cool. You retro-acculturated, if you will, your career. And then you went back into the general market, so-called general market. And here you are back where you belong, sir.
Very much so.
I want to hear more. Which leads me to Susie's email. So Susie, you emailed Stephen, and what happened? He was like ready to get that email.
I emailed Stephen because I had met Stephen back in the agency days, back when I was running the agency, and he was coming out of private equity. And at the time he was looking to get into media. And so a friend had connected us, and we had this amazing lunch where we talked about like all the possibilities that there were in media for the Latino space, if you will, like all the things that could be done that weren't being done for our market. And we were both really, really passionate about it. And at the time I was building brands. Like I built the original like Daisy Fuentes brand, right? That was launched in Kohl's, and I helped Maria Teresa build, Voto Latino. So I was used to like building brands. We were, doing this whole Brazil campaign with Macy's, working with a lot of corporations. And I was like, it's time for branded content. It's time to tell our stories. And we could do so in a much bigger, better way. So when I sold the agency, I literally took 2 years off to draw, right? Because I'm an artist at heart. I went to art school. I draw, I paint. And the agency were all—
She go to art school. Again, she went to Pratt.
I went to Pratt.
Like, she's a badass. I went to art school. No. She went to Pratt.
But I always knew that I was just passing through in the agency, in my time in the agency. I never felt I was in there forever. It was just like school for me. Like the agency world is like the best place for a creative to learn how to solve a business problem.
That's true.
So for me, the time I spent running the agency was like learning how to build a case study, learning how to understand business opportunity, learning how to use creativity to solve a problem, right? So I sold the agency, took 2 years off to draw and to incubate my properties and my content, my ideas, because it doesn't matter how good your idea is. If you can't show it, as opposed to just talking about it, nobody will truly understand that what you can deliver on, right? So I literally started drawing and painting, put a few things together, started talking to people, was invited to be a creator on Sesame Street, was invited to be had a couple things boiling. And then I thought, my agent at the time was like, can you get me some more data about this like Latino opportunity? Like, do Hispanics read, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, here it goes again. And I thought, the one person that I talked to that really got it inside out and truly got the vision was Steven. And I had just seen that he had a baby. Let me shoot him an email and kind of give him a sense of what I'm up to and see like what would he would advise me to do, basically. Like I wanted to get his advice, pick his brain. And I got way more than I expected.
Well, I mean, so what Susie's alluding to is, you know, that lunch, she was actually recruiting me to join her.
I was.
And ever
He
since
took me
then,
down.
I turned it down because I didn't want to stay in finance. It's just, you know, to be a CFO, just, you know, I felt
It was
like
a CFO role, it's true.
I mean, again, I could do that role, but it wasn't what I was going to be passionate about.
That was
And, you know, Susie and I have stayed friends, you know, now for, you know, call it 15 years, right? And so I feel like we had a lot of, you know, kind of shared experiences, you know, both bilingual, bicultural, you know, both had a passion for, you know, kind of entrepreneurship and just, you know, we both loved storytelling. And at the time, you know, when, you know, so in the summer of 2015 was when Susie reached out about this idea, and my wife was pregnant. We had our first child in July of 2015, and you know, a couple of different things were going on at the time. One, my father had passed in 2011, and my mother was now ill and you know, basically on her last leg. She ended up passing in November of 2016, and so it was very, you know, kind of bittersweet time because, you know, we just had our first baby. You know, you're thinking about your family, you're thinking about your legacy, really. And it was the kind of thing where it was like, wow, like, you know, one of the things that I just loved growing up, I just always loved travel. I've, you know, traveled to over 70 countries around the world. And, you know, growing up, I just never saw anything about the Dominican Republic. And, you know, I was just so proud of where my family's from. And, you know, I would spend all the summers there and the holidays. And so it's just so rich, the culture. But when I would tell people, you know, my family's from the Dominican Republic, they would be like, well, where is that? Or, you know, they would have this impression that was really not favorable. Like, oh, do people like, you know, live in huts? I mean, like crazy things, right? And, you know, that was then the scary thing is that stuff is still happening today in 2020, right? And this is this level of just other, or, you know, people don't know. And so I really wanted to figure out how could I build a brand? Because, you know, I've spent basically the past 20 years helping other companies build brands, but through data, right? Really understanding, you know, kind of either direct to consumer models or SaaS models, subscription as a service or software as a service, and, you know, really helping other folks build their brands. But I was using, you know, kind of all that expertise to kind of build this nascent travel brand, which was what ultimately became Tiny Travelers. And that was really exciting when Susie reached out, because it was, wow, like someone that also has that kind of same insight that there's stuff that could be culture inspired, that could be culturally authentic. And how do you really kind of solve the, you know, kind of the gap that's in the marketplace? You know, now that I was having a child, you don't really think about this stuff until you actually have kids. You start to look around you and you're like, wow, you know, I've been working in tech for 20 years. It is the dawn of the AI era. Anything that can be automated will be. There are going to be just whole, you know, kind of sectors that are going to go away because they're not going to be relevant anymore. You're going to have different types of jobs for this AI-driven future. And, you know, I'm over here working with some of the best technology companies on the planet. And then I start to look at education. Oh my God, what is being taught in schools? Like when you think about the skills that are being taught, are these 21st century skills? So it was this kind of like eye-opening moment where it's like, wow, the power of entertainment and the power of education, what if there's a way to really fuse those two things in a very kind of digitally savvy, kind of data-driven way? And that was really kind of the impetus of, hey, join forces and let's do this right. And that's was really the starting of Encantos.
And the power of entertainment and the power of education, the connective tissue, if you will, between those two things, your company is culture. I'm just going to read from your website what it says. It says, culture shapes the human experience and is multidimensional, defined not just by race, gender, and ethnicity, but also by lifestyles, tribes, and shared passion points. It's the connective tissue that unites all the elements of the brands that Encantos brings to life. And those brands, just to mention, are, I believe in order of in which they were released, is Canticos, Tiny Travelers, and most recently, Isa's Edible Adventures. We won't talk about those. But talk about culture. That's what connects you and Susie, even though you're from different Latino cultures, right? Talk about the importance of culture in your business.
I mean, culture makes everything richer. I'd like to say that certainly we see it in music, we see it in fashion, but culture is a rich source of creativity that brings communities together. And it often revolves around shared human values, right? And part of what we can use to bring people together is culture. And part of what we can use to educate people about other people that might be different or have different backgrounds than they do is culture, right? So especially when it comes to telling our Latino stories, it's really important that we celebrate who we are, that we celebrate our music, that we celebrate our food. When in the case of our brand Tiny Travelers, not only are we selling Latino culture, we're celebrating all cultures. We're celebrating Indian culture, we're celebrating Chinese culture. Yep. And we're really opening the door to what these rich cultures are about. And this is how they're different. And these are the wonderful things that they do. And isn't this cool, right? So I think that's a really important way that we can share our human stories and build bridges. Because at the end of the day, we really are about building bridges between cultures as opposed to walls. People fear what they don't understand. The more we can share who we are across different communities, the more we can really bring people together.
I have a question. So other than Dora the Explorer, who we all know very well, was there anything remotely like Encantos Media prior to you all creating this company?
So I'm going to say, while Dora is a fantastic case study, there is no Latino brand at our scale that is owned and run by Latinos. I would say that we're pretty much the first movers in the entertainment education space that are creating, you know, world-class brands, right?
It's right next to
English, and it's right next to me. See that? I have my magic. In English and in Spanish, and with Latinos behind it. Like our whole story is two Latino families that came together, right? We're pretty unique in that space, and we also happen to be female-owned and led, and we're a B company. So all of that is very, very important to us. The authenticity. Every single brand that we create has a passionate creator behind it. Steven knows that I rally against what I call corporate creative, which is when like corporate entities are like, oh, there's an opportunity here. Why don't we follow this formula and create this? This will work. And it never really works that way because someone needs to have a really passionate, you know, heartbeat behind the creative project that's being brought to life. Someone needs to have a vision, right? And so everything that we do is very creator-centered. And that's a very important part of our DNA. And I think it's the important part of any successful creative studio's DNA.
Okay, so Steven, so you're playing a little hard to get. Susie emailed you, followed up. She's laying out this business model.
Oh my God, he responded that same day.
No, there was no hard to get. She was trying 15 years ago to have me be a CFO.
Very hard to get, yeah.
That never sailed. The minute that she told me, hey, I'm working on something, and I was like, oh, I'm working on something too. And so that's where we just started the jam. I mean, literally, like, that was in the summer. You know, we incorporated the company in September 1st. And we actually started it not just as a B Corp, which, you know, as a lot of folks know, is kind of like this really great, you know, seal of approval. We actually went a step further. We're a public benefit corporation.
What is that?
So a public benefit corporation means that you do not only have to account for shareholders, which is typically what most companies is structured as a C Corp or an S Corp, but it means that you are beholden to your shareholders. For a public benefit corporation, you write into your bylaws that you are caring about your stakeholders. So think about triple bottom line. You care about community. You care about more than just shareholder value. Of course, making a profit is important, but we care about our community. And all of our brands have a social cause tied to them. We're literally designing purpose-driven family brands, and each of them gives back to a cause.
That's amazing. So PBC, Public Benefit Corporation. For those of you who have never heard of a PBC, I have it right? Public Benefit Corporation.
Yep.
Okay, so
by the way, like the most famous PBC, you may know some of them, Patagonia, right? Kickstarter, Honest Company, Method, you know, Etsy. Like these are all public benefit corporations.
I love that. I love that. And honestly, until you all, I had not heard of that. Yeah, more traditional, of course, I know all about.
It's funny. I feel like back in the days of Vox and the agency days, we used to do so much pro-social brand building work. I feel like we were a public benefit corporation before that was a thing, before there was a label. but now, and honestly, for me, that's just like natural. That's, I mean, as an artist, you want to serve. So if you can serve in a capacity where you're building a business that also does good in the community with with the profits that you make and with the people that you serve, that is the most natural thing in the world. So as soon as Stephen brought it up, I was like, yes.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your business model because I'm going to lose track, but it started as books. Then you went into, I believe, merchandise. Then you had a television show. You have apparel. I don't know the order in which all this unfolded, but
sure. So this has actually been very, thoughtfully designed, and it goes back to that earlier experience that I was describing at Akamai Technologies. So I think I've been chasing that type of platform, network model ever since that experience. And there is incredible power in network effects. And so what we are building is a business that has brand network effects. So what do I mean by that? At the heart of it, what is the core of every company? Some companies, it might be, entertainment, right? So it's just content. Some companies, it might be education, right? And so you have an educator at the center of it. Some companies could be data, like it's a programmatic thing. But we actually have at the heart of it, we're building a brand that has a character and a story inspired by culture, but that is the beating heart at the center. And that is the hardest thing to do. It just so happens that, my partner in purpose, Susie, that is her superpower. We are creating amazing, beloved, original IP. And we can do that in our sleep because we understand the cultural authenticity. And when you think about where we are, today, in the United States alone, 50% of kids are diverse. So there is a pent up demand to have stories and characters and brands that look like what kids look like today. That is at the heart. We then build a business around that brand, and it's a framework that can scale, and they all are able to cross-sell and upsell together. But there's 3 lines of business. The first is our direct-to-consumer business. That is all of our subscription-related offerings. So think of subscription apps, a Netflix or something. A subscription box, think about, like Birchbox or, Dollar Shave Club or whatever those subscription box businesses. We'll have subscription membership. Think about, you actually have things like Peloton, right? You're a member and you sign up for every month and you have, content or classes or whatever it is. And then certainly e-commerce. That's kind of the direct-to-consumer part of the business. The second part is licensing and partnerships. So because we're creating brands, well, we could do content licensing. And so that's what we did with Nickelodeon. We licensed our content for a period of time to them, but we own the IP, which is critical.
That is critical.
Critical. There is consumer products, right? So now that you actually have a beloved brand, well, let's create some consumer products around this, right? So here is our first ever bilingual chickies. They sing in English and in Spanish, and then you press it again to turn it off.
Please, can you please press the button? I want to hear.
Sure. And then one more time in Spanish. And then one more to turn it off to not drive mom and dad crazy.
That's super cute. I love that.
It is cute, right?
But that's, now consumer products licensing, right? So what people don't realize is, the bulk of the dollars for any type of brand are actually made in licensing. This is something that it's kind of like this hidden, behind the scenes industry, but licensing is a $280 billion industry. And the, kind of conception of, like content is where people make money, just as an example for Star Wars, for every $1 in film revenue, they made $10 in consumer products licensing.
Crazy.
And the most, kind of most valuable brand of all time, for like kids and family, believe it or not, no, it's actually Pokemon.
Yeah.
Really?
Pokemon since its inception in 1996, has generated over $95 billion, and 2/3 of that comes through licensing.
So
Go ahead.
just to add to what Steven's saying, so when I was working in the agency space, I was working with Macy's, and of course, you know, Kohl's and Target, we were always looking at the competition, and everyone was after the Latina mom, right? Everyone wanted to know, like, how can we sell more to the Latina mom? But no one was thinking, oh, how about I build a brand that's like baked in Latin culture to help her share her culture with her kids, right? Nobody was thinking with it with that lens, like, oh my gosh, there's so much wonderful potential that we can build here and then put in front of the Latina mom. Here is this wonderful brand for your children, and here we have a clothing line, and we have a toy line, and we have all these, you know, other things. So to Steven's point, that business opportunity was like staring me in the face at every single meeting I had, where it was like, what celebrity should we pose in? Should we plug in, you know, Eva Longoria, or should we plug in, you know, Thalia, or what celeb what should we use? I was like, oh my God, just build a brand with substance.
But so, you know, the direct to consumer is the first part, you know, focus on subscription revenue. The second being licensing and partnerships. We spoke about content licensing, consumer products licensing. There's also event licensing. You know, there is curriculum, you know, education licensing. So we have tons of interest from school districts that want to license our curriculum. And then brand partners, right? You know, brands want to be attached to our brands because we actually have audiences, right? We actually have the consumers that they're trying to connect with. So whether it's a CPG brand, or maybe it's a financial services brand, or a lodging brand, we actually have the brands. We actually are the ones engaged with, you know, kids and families. And then the third, which is actually, you know, kind of the smallest part of the business, but it's actually critical, is our publishing business. And so that's actually how we start each and every brand. We seed it with a book. And that is by design for a number of reasons. But at the top of it is, one, we get to own our own IP because we have now published it. It gives us a greater command of our rights. And second, there is a real tangible, you know, you cannot beat, here's, you know, our beloved Tiny Travelers, Puerto Rico. And, you know, this, you know, tangible physical product, we want to be wherever kids and families are. So this is a time of day where you actually have, you know, the opportunity to be on a screen and have a digital experience, but there's going to be times where you don't want a screen. And we want to be there during the arc of the day, wherever the family is. When you're putting your kids to bed and you want to read a book, well, guess what? We have an offering for you there. And, you know, it wasn't our intention to become a publisher. Like, we're not an imprint. We became a publisher. And Susie, again, you know, she's being very diplomatic about it, but we met with all the large publishing houses, and we were told things that were just truly offensive, where, you know, oh, but Hispanics don't really read, or Latinos don't buy books, or you don't need to make, you know, this beautiful, you know, kind of book with, you know, kind of lift the flaps and like all these kind of features and functionality. That's really not necessary. Just dumb it down for that audience. So out of frustration, we said, you know what? We're going to hack the system. And we figured out where are the best books made. We found the printers in China. We found a distributor. And Encantos is now one of the largest kids and family publishers focused on diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Bravo to you both. That's amazing. What a story you guys have. And obviously very smart and well thought out business model. Is there any rhyme or reason to why Canticos first, Tiny Travelers, then Isa's Edible Adventures? And is there anything you could tell us? Like, what's the next category?
Ooh.
No, there's one coming.
No, Canticos was like low-hanging fruit. Honestly, like Canticos had been something that I mean, I was literally translating songs and having fun with it while I was still like had the agency, right? And so as soon as like by the time Steven and I joined forces, I had like 3 books made, and like I really, that was a vision that was just, plus it was like a no-brainer. Honestly, Canticos is part public service. It's like our nursery rhymes deserve to be collected and presented in a beautiful brand. Like that is just something that had to be done, and if we didn't do it, someone else was going to do it badly, and I was going to be really pissed. So we just had to do Canticos. And then other brands come as they are nurtured, right? Tiny Travelers was what Steven came with. He's like, Susie, you know, I was a Fulbright scholar, and I'm really passionate. I've lived in like 70 different countries, and I'm really passionate about the cultures of the world. And so I love this idea of this travel brand. I was like, oh my God, that's a beautiful idea. I'm also a student of culture, you know? So that was a natural next step. And also, you know, how many families don't love to travel? And every time you want to take your kids someplace, it's like, okay, I'm going to Colombia. Where's good for kids? Where, you know what I mean? Where are the fun places? Like what kind of destinations are kids interested in, right? So just creating a brand that could bring that kind of information together and package it for kids. So whether it's pretend play at home that you're traveling, or whether it's, okay, now we're traveling, where do we go? There's a lot to play with there. And then in the case of Isa's Edible Adventures, this wonderful celebrity chef came to us, and she's half Pakistani and half Tanzanian. And I mean, she's worked in like some of the best restaurants here in New York City, Per Se, June, right? And she was like, you know, I have this wonderful idea for a brand starring a little girl who's half Black, half Indian, like my daughter, right? It's inspired by my daughter. And she's a little chef, and she believes that food is love, and food is how we take care of people. And her mother works in this international restaurant, and she sees these people come in from different countries, and she wants to serve them a dish that makes them feel better. So she travels the world. There's always 3 ingredients that are missing. She goes to different countries. She gets to know the culture of that country, gets the 3 missing ingredients, and then prepares this special dish for the special people. And when she presented it to me, I was like, oh my God, it's Doc McStuffins for food. I love it, right? Number 2, oh my gosh, it's like the cultures of the world with this little girl. And she's got a pet pig. And just, there were so many things I loved about it, from what it taught us about empathy, from what it teaches us about quality of ingredients and quality of food, what it teaches you about culture, what it teaches you about, you know, just bringing it all together and cooking dishes. And right now, when cooking is more important than ever, anyone that has kids right now is probably cooking with their kids. So the play patterns around, you know, food play, hair play, starring this little mixed race Black girl, there was so many things to love about it. And most importantly, here's this wonderful, you know, celebrity chef who is super passionate about her project, who's going to like create this world of food and stories for us. Mm-hmm. And that is the kind of partner that we want, right? People that like just have extraordinary visions and who happen to be putting their finger on a truly powerful business opportunity as well as a creative space. If that makes sense.
It does. I have ideas. I'm going to pitch you guys ideas now. I want to be a part of it.
So that's the caveat, right? So one, we are going to have a very focused portfolio of family brands. We're not going to do, you know, 100 brands. We're going to do a very select group of brands, and they're by design. They're really mapping and inspired by the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Ah, okay.
So if you actually go, you know, and I've got my little sheet here, but if you go to the UN and you actually see what the Sustainable Development Goals, there's 17.
It's the roadmap.
And, you know, this is our roadmap. So, you know, for example, one is on, you know, good health and well-being. Well, guess what? Isa's Edible Adventures goes into that swim lane, right? Because granted, it's about, you know, learning about food and cooking, but it teaches, you know, these 21st century skills around health and wellness literacy. That's a really important skill. You need to understand that at a young age. And, you know, there's also a science element. So think about the science of ingredients. How do you actually cook? And there's measurement and, you know, precision when you're actually, you know, making a recipe. So there's a really great, you know, kind of art and science blend to it. And then we obviously need all of our brands to give back to a cause. So we're going to be focused on food insecurity and giving back around that. But all of the brands are going to have, you know, some type of tie to those sustainable development goals. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we care about impact. So, you know, we need to find either brands that we will create in-house or we will collaborate and partner with other creators. But it definitely is, you know, kind of, if you think about the venture studio model, we really are a brand studio. And so it's a family brand studio and we have our lanes and, you know, we are at different levels of development, whether it's alpha, beta, or general availability with, mm-hmm. you know, kind of lots of different concepts in those lanes.
It's amazing how forensically thought out your business is. There's cute little pollitos. Meanwhile, Steven's got his chart. It's like art and science at its best. Amazing.
We try.
All right, but you need both. You need both, right?
You absolutely need both. The yin and the yang, if you will.
There you
Absolutely,
go.
my
There you
friend.
go.
Love that.
Got it
Love
right there. I'm down with it. I'm down with it. So one of the things you recently did in lieu of the pandemic and what's going on, you created a One Big World concept where it was in conjunction with UNICEF and Tiny Traveler. Why don't you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So this was just something that was, kind of a no-brainer in terms of Tiny Travelers. We have been working with different, types of charities. We've been supporting Save the Children last year. We actually helped raise a lot of funds for that with their border program, by the way, which was, something really meaningful to the Latino community. It just goes to show that, if we don't step up and if we do not look out for our Latino community, no one else is, right? And that's just, real talk. But this was really a great opportunity because if 9 out of 10, every 10 kids are stuck at home now, they're not going to school. Guess what? They're also not traveling. They're not learning about the world. They can't explore. If they were going to go on spring break for a trip, they're now stuck at home. And maybe you never had the resources to travel. Maybe you can afford to travel, but you still want to explore and learn about the world. So we thought, how about we flip this? How about we bring the world to all the kids at home? And that really is what the spirit of One Big World is. It's a little bit of, it's a small world theme. We actually don't think it's a small world. We actually think it's a big, beautifully diverse world. And you need to go out there and explore it. That's how you build those bridges. So let us get everyone to kind of rally around hashtag One Big World, put up a picture of a place that you love or where your family's from. Maybe you do a video and you actually show something about a place that you love or where your family's from. And for all those posts, we will make donations to UNICEF, which is obviously at the forefront, helping kids around the world as we go through this pandemic.
It's a fantastic idea. Yeah, I saw when you all announced it. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, that's great.
So
actually, we just had we've had celebrities kind of support it and put out posts. We just had a fellow Dominicana, Dania, who actually did a post recently. So it's fun to see kind of random folks or celebrities and influencers start to share in the program.
I mean, it certainly helps. It absolutely does to amplify it. Even though you have 200 million followers, Stephen, we do need some celebrities.
Yeah, you gotta talk to John. You gotta tell John to do one for Puerto Rico.
We will do that. John has kids. They're in college.
Gotta get John the Puerto Rico book, actually.
Absolutely.
We'll talk offline. Okay. So, as you mentioned, Latinos looking out for Latinos, the Latinx narrative, if you will, right? Well before the pandemic and certainly during the pandemic, given how disproportionately our community has been affected by this, is clearly, it's not great. At the same time, our community is extremely resilient and has been through a lot, to come to this country and build, the infrastructure that we have. And we know that. But what's your message to the business world and others who may be assuming that our community is weaker or, not going to bounce back as quickly? How do we take our narrative and flip it on its head? Because I'm optimistic about how we're going to bounce back from this.
Sure. Look, I think there is, there's two sides to every story. And so you got to look at the downside before you look at the upside. That's just my training as a value investor, very, kind of Warren Buffett, kind of value investment mindset. And you look at the downside, and the downside is, we are facing what is going to be structural change in not just our economy, but also consumer behavior. And so this is not going to be a forever change, but this is going to be a multi-year change and impact. And we are really seeing it because while everyone's trying to take care of their business or their customers, at Encantos, we're trying to take care of your kids and help them learn at home. So if you think about what's going to happen in the fall, a lot of folks have canceled the school year, up until June, but, our school is going to reopen in the fall. And if they don't reopen, what do you do? If they do reopen, what do you do? Like, do you send your kid to school at the risk of maybe they get sick still? Because, our testing is so bad and just it's all been, incredibly, botched and just so mismanaged. So those are real, kind of questions and concerns. And when you think about the learning at home aspect, there are 22 million households in this country that actually don't have internet access. So while everyone's focused on, you could just get online, well, one, you might not have access to internet, or maybe you actually went to a public library to get internet access, because usually our Black and brown communities are the ones that are using those public services. So now you can't even get that. Or, go a step further, what about food? Think about back to Isa and the food insecurity. We actually know here in Los Angeles, LAUSD, they are open. They're still doing meals, throughout the week, because that is actually a lot of families' only source of food. We actually have stories here in LA where, people live far away from maybe the school district. You actually have people walking to the schools to actually get food. That's how bad it is in certain, segments of the community. So it's going to impact kids and families. There's going to be a huge education gap because we've already been behind. I mean, just a crazy stat, 65% of kids in America that when they are in the 3rd grade, they are not reading at the right levels. That is going to be the biggest predictor of academic success. So that is 2/3 of kids are already behind. Just imagine what's going to happen during this lost school year, right? And the kids that are disproportionately already having an achievement gap are, again, Black and brown kids. So there is that angle that we're going to be impacted. And then you just have the economic reality, right? You have 22 million people have filed for unemployment. A lot of these businesses are not going to come back. Maybe those jobs go away. And you also are going to have to rethink the way businesses have been done. If you were in the live events business, which obviously you are, how does that reopen? Is that going to be different? So I feel like there is a real change that we have to address and just be very, candid about. We can't sugarcoat it for our community. They need to hear that firsthand so they can prepare for what is hopefully the upside. And what is going to be the upside? The fact that you now have all these incredible digital tools to learn, that you actually are going to have people maybe not have to travel as much, right? Because you can actually do more using video conferencing and other digital tools. It's going to change the way work is done. And I completely have faith in our Latino community because there is no one that outworks, out hustles, out everything than a Latino family, right? They will figure out a way to get it done. And I really feel like Latinos are the OG entrepreneurs, right? In Silicon Valley, you're an entrepreneur because you kind of hustled. That's just, an immigrant mindset, right? And so I feel like that's kind of part of our DNA, and we will find a way out because that's what Latinos do.
Yeah, I would just say that at our core, Latinos take care of each other, and that very much distinguishes us in this country in terms of how we treat each other. We've survived, civil war, earthquakes, economic oppression, dictatorships. We come to this country not knowing the language. We start from scratch. We build our communities. Wearing a mask and gloves in pandemics is not going to shut us down. And most of us are, unfortunately, the indispensable workers that are still working, that are still going to work, and that are still exposing themselves very carefully to all the dangers that there are, and that are getting sick, and that are recuperating, and that are those strong people whose plasma is going to be in demand. So I would say that Latinos are uniquely qualified to plow forward in circumstances like this, because if there's something that we're used to dealing with, it's difficulty. Right.
And the coda to that, amigo, is at 18% of the population going to 30% by 2040, with Latinos being almost 30% of kids in America today. Mm-hmm. If the Latino community is not successful, America will not be successful. Mm-hmm. Those two things are intertwined. Mm-hmm. So when you're asking that question, you're really asking, is America going to be able to rebound from this? And that is going to be truly dependent on Latinos.
Very well put. Okay, so I got to go in a few minutes, guys. We could talk for hours. We could go on and on here, but I want to.
We usually do.
I'm really feeling my heart and my spirit, and it's so good to see you both. See you, not just hear you.
I know, right?
All right, so we're going to do the shelter in place speed round, and we're going to rotate who's answering. I guess Steven said ladies first, so, and you could answer, just doesn't have to be like one word, but, quickly. It is the speed round. Here we go. So, for Susie. Susie, what has been the biggest challenge since the pandemic started for you?
Everyone on calls at the same time. Oh, and my cleaning lady can't come. I'm sorry. That's a real thing. So cleaning all the, keeping the house clean, keeping kids fed, keeping family fed, and keeping everyone at peace.
The struggle is real, Susie.
The struggle is real.
Okay. Steven, favorite shows you've binged during La Cuarentena?
Well, I live watching kids animation since I have a 4.5 and 2-year-old. So I don't know if that truly counts, but I'm a news junkie, so I am just addicted to the news. And you know, it's just really scary to see, you know, kind of what is happening every day. But I would say I've just been binging on news.
Interesting. So no Tiger King. You're the first group that has not said Tiger King.
I refuse to give any oxygen to that. We do not need that.
Yeah, I would give a different answer than Steve. I'm an NPR junkie, so I listen to the news a lot. But otherwise, for me at night, it's Ozark, it's Witcher, it's Hentified, it's all these great shows out there.
Hentified. I've heard amazing things about Hentified.
Yeah.
By the way, Hentified is where my wife Nuria is from
There you
Boyle Heights.
go.
Boyle Heights. All right.
That-
Cool. Yeah, check out Hentified. I've heard amazing things.
Mhm.
All right. Susie, are you doing anything special to stay fit while sheltering in place? Or are you like me and you're eating your feelings?
I wouldn't say that I'm doing much more than I used to do. I wish I could say I'm actually trying to watch what I eat and just do a lot of stretching in the morning because like I'm wall to wall Zoom. I'm working more actually because now I'm home. So instead of starting work at like, 9:30 or what, like you're dropping the kids off and then starting work, I'm starting work at, when Steven sends me that 7 o'clock, because he's on the West Coast, but he'll still text me at 7 a.m.
I'm still on New York time, dude. Like, what is this West Coast
starting
thing?
work at 7:38, right? And I'm going until 9 o'clock. So the workday is longer.
Okay. All right. Steven, favorite Latin food or any food you've been eating most lately?
Oh my God, tostones every day. As many tostones as I can get.
Con mojo o con ketchup?
Ketchup, ¿qué es eso, muchacho?
Eso no se hace. Mojo, por favor.
Okay. Susie, what are you doing to stay sane right now?
Netflix.
Good answer. Steven, other than Dr. Fauci, who has comforted you the most lately?
I gotta tell you, it's been my son Sebastian. I mean, Sienna is 2. She's starting to chat a lot, but Sebastian is like 4.5, and he's just in this ridiculously cute and cuddly. He wants me to read him a book every night. He just wants to crawl on my lap. I'm his best buddy, so we're building trains together. Like, he's just been really comforting for me.
Enjoy that. Enjoy it while you can. Wait till the teen years. He won't be feeling the same way.
I'll just show him this clip then.
Exactly.
Actually, that's a good point. Like my daughter, it's more my daughter. My son doesn't like to watch movies. He's all about the gaming. But my daughter and I, we bond a lot over watching things together.
That's beautiful. I love that. All right, Susie, I don't know if you've noticed, there's some really cool Cuarentina masks out there. Have you noticed any? And is there going to be an Encantos, Canticos? Talk to me. Are we working on a mask?
So the funny thing is, we're definitely looking at it because it's not going away anytime soon. And, little kids need masks. So we're definitely looking at that right now. As a mom, I am an utter mask failure. I tried to make my own mask and it was a disaster. Luckily, my husband has my father-in-law's a doctor, so we have a ton of masks here in the house. But yeah, I think masks are not going anywhere. I think jackets with masks built in are a real thing coming soon, and we absolutely are looking at masks.
I believe it. Steven, how many times a day are you washing your hands?
So believe it or not, I obviously wash my hands in the morning, after a meal, whatever. But I am really not allowed to leave the house because my wife is like, you cannot afford to get sick. So she is the one that's been, kind of going out. We really aren't doing, much other than, kind of grocery shopping. And maybe we'll go and, do a drive-by, Feliz cumpleaños to a friend or something in the neighborhood. But other than that, I really have just been staying put. And, we're trying to meet up and keep with the demand because, we launched this Encantos Learning Hub, offering all these free resources for kids and families at home. So, we got plenty to do. So washing my hands after I eat.
Okay. Stay away from those farmers markets. You guys in Los Angeles are going crazy in the farmers markets.
I know. It's a thing out here. Who knew?
Yeah, I know. You need your alfalfa sprouts. I got it. Okay. Susie, what have you learned about yourself over the past 30 days? It's the biggest takeaway.
The biggest takeaway is that, honestly, that I'm good with the stress management part, actually, and I like keeping people happy, right? I like making sure the energy is good. So I like de-stressing people and making sure that the company, because we're all grounded now, and figuring out how you print things and the mechanics of all of that. I like making sure the juju is good everywhere, if you will. So
Susie is our president and chief creative officer, but her real title is CFO, our chief fund officer.
Oh, I know Susie. We hung out in the south of France.
yes, we did. We did. He was my dinner buddy.
Okay, Stephen, yes or no to sweatpants for more than one day in a row?
Oh, absolutely. Every day. I mean, I'm wearing them now.
Are you?
Right? So,
Susie, are you wearing sweatpants or pajama bottoms right now?
Normally, I would be in a pair of yoga pants, but today I did a grocery run, so I've got regular pants on.
Thank you for your honesty.
but they're like Nike, like athleisure. That's I don't call them sweatpants. It's athleisure.
Yeah. We all know what it is. Okay, Steven.
Funny aside, you will see this episode. It'll probably air before this one. But I was speaking to Claudia Romo Edelman, who's always
Of course.
put together. It's unbelievable. And I asked her the same question. She's like, I am fully put together, but I have not worn shoes.
Shoes, total.
Wearing these amazing socks. I said, where are your Manolo Blahniks? No, didn't socks at all.
Nice.
And that woman who puts on a pair of heels and gets to be like 6'5".
Claudia's unbelievable. All right, last question for you both. And just off the top of your head, what is your positive message to those in the Latinx community as we look to the future together during this crazy time?
I will go first. Take care of each other and remember that your network is your capital. So it's really important that we continue to connect with each other and that we continue to pick each other's brain and that we continue to support each other. But at our core, the more we take care of each other, the more we grow.
Love that. Stephen?
And so, inspired by mi amigo Lin-Manuel Miranda, two things. One, immigrants, we get the job done. So never forget that we are the ones that will pull through this. And two, paciencia y fe, right? Like you need to have paciencia and fe. This too will pass. We will be stronger coming out of this. And we truly are all in this together.
Great words of wisdom. Thank you for imparting your wisdom and your creativity and your wonderful spirit upon me, this show, and everyone who's watched today. God bless you both. Stay safe. Stay away from farmers markets. Stephen, do not leave the house, no matter what.
David, seriously, thank you for what you do. You do our community just a true service. And, thank you for, obviously all the great work you do with Hispanicize and NGL Collective. And, you just really, you're keeping us all together. So thank you for just, all the things that you do for us.
Thank you so much. It's what I do.
All right, awesome, amigo.
Love you both. Thank you so much. And be well.
Likewise. Ciao.